My name is Tammy Lee Anderson, and I've had 3 near-death experiences. I don't know what it's like before a near-death experience and after, because my two of my near-death experiences happened when I was baby. I was born dead, and then about almost 6 months later, I died again. And then I had another near-death experience at 23 years old. So I can't tell you if my life was different after the near-death experience, because I have to say, after the third near-death experience, though, there were some definite changes. But the first two, so my life has always been a bit weird. I think are a bit different because of these near-death experiences as a baby. So the first near-death experience, I was born premature, a little over 2 months premature as a baby, and I was the umbilical cord was around my neck, and I suffocated. Basically, I couldn't breathe. It was my mom was in labor 38 hours, poor mom. And it was a very difficult labor, and I was stuck in the birth canal, so I was flat when I came out. I was blue, and then the doctors began to work on me frantically, and they told my mom they were sorry because I didn't live. I didn't make it, but obviously I did. And what I can tell you about I wasn't aware of these first 2 near-death experiences as a baby until I was 17 years old. So let me go back to that, start there. When I was 17 years old, I used to go to a nearby church, and I just enjoyed sitting there when there was no people, and I enjoyed sitting in the quiet. And I didn't belong to this church. It was a Catholic church, but I didn't belong to this church. I just went there because it was peaceful. And so I sat in the quiet, and, the church had a nice smell of incense, and it was quiet. And so I would just go there and sit very often. And one day there was this priest, and he saw me, and he said, "You're here often. What do you come here for?" And I couldn't tell him, it was I just couldn't put it into words. I just found a deep peace in the quiet. And he offered to say a prayer for me. And I said, okay. And I thought he would say some words or something, but he ended up putting his hands on my head. And I felt this warm heat, like honey, go through my body. And the sensation was just this sinking, but this deep feeling of peace, and it went into my stomach, and then it was like an explosion, a re-experiencing, a remembering, but I say both. It was a re-experiencing and a remembering, because I felt everything. These memories of my birth started flooding in. I remembered emotions of my parents, my grandparents, the doctors, the nurses, and it was just incredible, because I just felt all these emotions, and I felt my mom's shame as well, because I was born early, and it was my parents got married early to kind of cover up the fact that they hadn't been married before I was born. So it was a secret, and my being born early was displaying the secret. So I could feel her emotion of shame. I could feel her emotion of fear. And then I also had a feeling of deep peace as I was out of my body, and I had no thought to go back in the body. It was just an observing. I was aware of light all around me, this peaceful light. And that was the first near-death experience. It was just complete peace. And it was like I was home. And then the second near-death experience I remembered in this same experience, that came flooding in when this priest had prayed for me. And I remembered the second near-death experience because that one was quite interesting. I had to have a surgery. They had to cut my head open because the soft spots in the head were closed, and so it couldn't grow. So at almost 6 months old, they had to do a major surgery, and they gave me anesthesia, and my heart stopped on them. So they had to restart my heart. In that experience, I just remember going out of my body, having no desire to be back in my body. I remember the peace of the light. I remember light beings around me, and I remember familiar, like I was like with family, like people I had known forever. And it was just completely peaceful, and the light kind of just blends through you. It's just amazingly peaceful. And so that was the second near-death experience. So that had a dramatic shift in my life. I was already looking towards spirituality just in my own way by praying and going into the silence, but it shifted my life in the sense that I thought then that I would go and live in a religious community. So I started going to different religious communities, and I lived for over 13 years in different monasteries and convents all over the United States and in Europe. And I lived in a hermitage at a monastery for a year. And I was just seeking that connection in a very deep way. So I would say that, yes, it did change my life from that experience. It led me into seeking. Ultimately, the seeking I found, at this time in my life, I realized what I was seeking for all those years was inside me. It wasn't outside of me. And so, but those 13 years of going into different convents and different communities, I found I really loved community. I loved being with a group of like-minded people who had a common vision, a common goal, and I enjoyed the group gathering in prayer together, and just the community life overall. I ended up in the late 90s deciding not to join a religious community. And what happened was I was with the Franciscan community, and I was protesting U.S. involvement in Central America. So we were doing a nonviolent protest, expecting to get arrested because, that's what you do when you nonviolently protest. And so we were getting, protesting in front of I believe it was an army base, and we were getting arrested. And I remember one of the sisters in the community, she was getting arrested, and I just saw in her eyes this resistance, this anger, when the police officer was putting the handcuffs on. And I thought to myself, that has nothing to do with what we're protesting. And I asked myself, what am I angry about in my life? What am I protesting that has nothing to do with this protest? So it caused me to go inside and to ask deep questions. And one of the things that I realized is that my relationship with my father was not so good. And so I decided I'm going to go back to California. I was in Milwaukee at the time. I'm going to go back to California. I'm going to work on this relationship and try to find peace in this relationship. Well, what happened was I came back, and I decided I was also going to go to graduate school and study. My undergraduate degree was in theology and philosophy because I I was seeking, and that was part of my trying to understand God at the time. Um, Anyways, I came back to graduate school and I started to work on my relationship with my father, and it didn't go so well. And and so what I realized then is that I had to go deeper. I had to work on my relationship with myself. And so I did 10 years or more of psychotherapy and working on family patterns within myself. And what I realize is we have patterns through these personalities that we've incarnated into a pattern, into a lineage. And I had these patterns, and I needed to see how I could harmonize and become in alignment with my soul and my emotion. And so that was a long path. It was a very fruitful path, but not easy to work on your own self. And what I realize is so much of the strife in the world is our projection out. We're trying to gather love from the outside in. And what I realize is love comes from the inside out. We have to go and we have to love every aspect of ourself. And that means loving the story, loving the patterns, loving our lineage, because we're a continuation, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, of our families, and so as human beings. And so it's falling in love with that, forgiving that aspect of learning forgiveness for oneself and others. And so that's what I did. And I continued graduate school. I studied marriage and family therapy counseling, so I became a psychotherapist as well. And then I got another master's degree in kinesiology, exercise physiology. So what I was trying to combine in my studies was a harmonization, a combination of body, mind, spirit as one. So I opened a private practice, and I did 30 years of somatic psychology and body work. So I had clients coming to me, and the modality that I used was Rolf structure integration, which is a series of going through the body and aligning the body, mind, and spirit. So it's creating a relationship through the pelvis, through the feet, through the knees, through the alignment of the spine. It's based in osteopathic therapy, so it's quite interesting. And so I did that until COVID hit, and then my practice changed, and I actually became a practicing medium. So right now I'm practicing mediumship, and that ties into the sensitivities that I had all my life from my near-death experiences. I was quite sensitive as a child, and I had experiences, and I believe it's connected to the near-death experiences, where I had precognition, where I was aware when people were going to die, when they were going to pass. And I did not see this as a gift, because there was nothing I could change about it. When I get these feelings from people, it's just I know they're passing soon. And I had that feeling with my brother when he passed for several months before. He was every time he'd walk away from me, I'd see his back, and I had told my mother, I feel like he's going away and not coming back. And so and it was true, and I won't go into that story here, but he passed in a car accident not too much longer. And so it was very sudden and turned your world upside down. And but precognition was something I had all my life from this near-death experiences, but I wouldn't say I thought it was a gift. It was more of a burden to me. But mediumship the practice of mediumship, connecting to those who've lost loved ones, has been absolutely an amazing experience. I love it's a combination of healing practice where I'm bringing the psychotherapy and the integration body, mind, spirit healing into the experience of grief for people. I work with a lot of parents who've lost children and all people, people have lost spouses and stuff. And I am just blown away by how those in spirit, how they're connected to us. We're never alone. And I believe it's because we're all spirit. All of us are spirit. And so all of us can connect to our loved ones. All of us have that link, and the link has never been broken. In fact, I feel that there's an aspect of us only here in a human being experience, but most of our awareness is still in spirit. We are spirit. And so let me go to my third near-death experience, and that was at age 23. I was in college, and it was just a few months after my brother's death, and I was quite depressed, and in fact, I was suicidal. But that's an experience. That's an experience I want to go back to tell you that what happened there. But let me go back to about almost 2 months, I guess, before my brother died. I was sharing with him my experience of being in the mountains and having this near-death experience. What happened there was, I shared with him, is that I was in the mountains, I was hiking, I was fasting, I wasn't drinking enough water, and I had not eaten in about a week, and I had not consumed enough water. So I think what happened is I was dehydrated, and I basically had a heat stroke, and I collapsed on the trail, and I went out of my body, and I was in the light. And I was going towards the light, and this experience, it was like a stream of souls going towards the light. And the light was so peaceful and so loving, and I could still feel it as I take my awareness back to that. I just felt this love that was just drawing me towards the light. And in front of me, and there were just uncountable souls, and it was kind of like a tunnel, except there were no boundaries to the tunnel. There was no edge. So it was just this infinite streaming. And so right before me, I saw this person's back, and I recognized him. I said, it was my grandfather. And I said, Papa. And he turned around. And when he turned around, it was just this blending of him and me together. And it was just pure joy. And I have to say, it's more than telepathic. To me, it was like a soul to soul blending where there's nothing unknown and there's only love between you. And it was just so beautiful. And I asked him, I said, have you met Jesus? Because I've heard a lot about Jesus, and I wondered about the truth of him. And as soon as I said that, I was looking in my grandfather's eyes, but then all of a sudden I was looking into Jesus's eyes. And it was just unbelievable love. And it was like ecstasy on ecstasy. And I had this love filling my heart. And I was just going into that love. And I wanted to know who he really was in this life. And I understood a lot of things we've built a church around, which is not authentically him. He was very humble man, and he never wanted to be an icon or a religious symbol. He was pointing us into understanding the light within us. And he said, you'll do greater things than I. And so he was a great teacher. And a man of just amazing love. And I was being just drawn into his love. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was being drawn into the light even more. And all of a sudden, this beautiful being drew me to the side. And I would say she because there was a softness, but there was no male or female. It was just, I had this being of light pull me to the side. I was no longer going towards this light. I was onto the side, like they wanted to speak with me. And I started asking questions with my words, like, is there suffering? Why are there, why do babies die? Why? All the whys you wonder about life. And what I realized as soon as I had the question in my words, it came immediately into my awareness, immediately into my mind, the answer. And it was soon I realized that I didn't have to say it with my words. I could just think it. So then it was even faster. And I just felt all this, it was information download, and it turned into like sparks of light, just downloading into my being. And I had like reds and golds and colors I had never seen before, just filling my body, these darts of light coming in through my being. And every dart of light was knowing, it was understanding, it was and it was just a feeling. And it was just like there was no limit to the amount that they could be filled. It was just it was an explosion, it felt like, of light, and a download after download after download of information, of knowing. And one of the things that I'll say is that suffering, I was aware that everything here is perfect, even though we don't see that in our human perspective. From a soul's perspective, for the divine perspective, everything is perfect. And that doesn't say that suffering, is good or okay. It's just like, but the whole picture of contrast coming in, having your soul come into a world of polarity and contrast, is what we're here to experience, because it offers us a deeper choice as a soul, to make the decision to choose love, to consciously choose love. We have these difficult experiences, and it's like, can I even love this? Can I even turn to love in this? Can I forgive this? And so it offers the soul, it offers an opportunity for expanded state of love, for expanded states of consciousness. And so it's perfect. Life is perfect in its imperfection. And sometimes we don't want to hear that, but it really is. Most of the time when you ask somebody about their life and the hard times, they reflect and they say, that helped me see things that I didn't see before. It expanded my awareness. And even though it was hard, it helped me more than anything in my life, because I learned, I grew in compassion. I always thought that I would never want to meet a person that had no dysfunction or no pain in their life, because they would have this much compassion, this much love, because it wouldn't make any sense. They wouldn't have any depth. And so our suffering offers us a sense of depth, if we turn towards the light. If we basically transform our suffering into love, into forgiveness, into compassion. So we are basically the transformers. We are here as light beings, transforming our human experience into light. And that's the purpose. That just came to me. We are the transformers. I think that fits, because basically we're here to shine our light. As a friend says, we're here to be a lighthouse. She says a lighthouse, and I think that's true. We're here to be a lighthouse in the world, and shine our unique light. We're not here to be a Jesus. We're not here to copy some teacher. We're here to be the unique aspect and face of God. Each of us is different, and we're a different face of God. And so it's not about copying your teachers. There are teachers and messengers, but it's not about imitation. It's about they're pointing at something, and it's your job to look and go and see what you find and how it opens your life and your soul. So basically, I believe at this time in our history, instead of locked down and religious with, commands and stuff, we instead of handing our power and our responsibility over to a teacher, we look within. The kingdom of God is within you. All teachers have said this, have pointed in that direction. And so the work is to take the responsibility and choose that for yourself in your own life, And people often ask me, what's my purpose in my life? And it's like, your purpose is to find your purpose and to express that. Nobody from outside can tell you that, right? Nobody can say, this is a purpose for your life. And if you allow somebody to do that for you, you've given up your power, and you've given up responsibility to take the lead in your own choices and responsibility. By making our choices and falling on our face, we learn. Failure is not failure. It's just a learning if you're smart. You learn from your experiences and you grow. And it's all about growing and saying, okay, well, that didn't work. I'm going to go down this direction. There truly is no path that's the wrong path. All paths lead home, which is our true home. It's the soul's home, which is love. But you can't do this life wrong. You can have some quite difficult and challenging experiences by your choices, but nothing is wrong in your choice or your path. Every path leads to love, to home. And if I choose a difficult life and I go to prison for it, that's a difficult life. Or I choose a life of addiction, that's a challenging life. That really is a painful one. But there is no right or wrong. It's an experience. And so I see on a bigger level, on a lower level, on a human level, yes, there is right or wrong. We have right or wrong, but on a soul's level, on a spirit level, there is no right or wrong. It's just an experience. And so, I hope that makes sense. It's not an easy thing to explain because it doesn't make sense to the mind. But when I, look back at the difficult, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I'm sure that most everybody listening, when we look back at the difficult challenges in our life, they've made us who we are. They've shaped our perception and point of view. So this third near-death experience, I was out of my body. I was surrounded by light beings. I was just being held in love. And I saw my grandfather, I saw Jesus, and then I was taken aside. And what drew me back into my body, because I had no desire whatsoever to come back in a body. I was going towards the light. But what drew me back in the body, nobody asked me permission. I would have said no. But I was drawn back into my body by the sound of a horse in my ear. I felt the breath of this horse going in my ear, and it brought my attention back into my body, and it was really painful. I have to say, it was heavy. It was one of the most painful experiences I think I've ever had, because it was so condensed. To be in an expanded state of awareness and then go back and be drawn back into a body, this restriction and this contraction, it was not good. And it's hard to explain, but it was just it felt heavy, and I laid there for on the ground for hours. It could have been 3 hours, I don't know, but I laid there trying to get my energy because my energy was so low, and it was just I couldn't move, and I just laid there for hours trying to get myself back in my body because I felt like I was it wa it was a mess. It was not good. So, that was my experience of my near-death experience, and that took me to university where I studied theology and philosophy, trying to understand, studying, religions, world religions. I was trying to understand all of this, and, I hadn't read much about I don't think I even read it I didn't even know about near-death experiences then because that was in the early that was early '80s, so that was 1982. So, my awareness grew as I studied, I noticed that some of the mystics had similar experiences of these, experiences of going into the light. I was very attracted to John of the Cross, to Saint Francis, and some of the and Teresa of Avila, and, Thomas Merton. Some of these, people who had these mystical experiences, I could find a parallel to what I experienced, and so I was searching then. And so a few months later, I told my brother about this, and then he passed. So going back to university when I returned after my brother's passing, um, I'll just share what this experience with you is. I had an experience of being really depressed because I thought, having known that my brother was going to leave, and I thought, is there some way I could have stopped it? Is there something I could have said? All the wouldas, shouldas, I should have done this, should have done that, and maybe it would have changed things. So I was basically so depressed, I was suicidal, and I was on the floor of my dorm room, and I had a bottle of pills, and I was ready just to leave my body, leave life as a human being. And I remember sitting there with the pills, ready to take them, and I heard this presence I've had with me since a baby. I've never been without a sense of this presence, this loving presence with me. And this presence said to me, "I love you." And I said, "Leave me alone." And as soon as I did that, it was like a snap of consciousness, and I went into the void, and it was complete stillness. It was dark. There was nothing. It was like being in pre-creation where there was complete stillness and there was nothing. And there was just one. And I realized this, and as soon as it was like it's hard to put this into words because it's beyond words. But as soon as I experienced this darkness, this void, this no thing, there was nothing, um, I said, "No, that's not what I want." And as soon as I said that, I was back in a body, and I was back on the floor in my dorm room, and I was just filled with gratitude for this human experience. I was crying because I was filled with love, and I realized as creator, as an aspect of the divine one I am, we are creating, um, and it is amazing, it is magnificent. And we are creative beings, and that's what we're here to do is create with love. And so the interesting thing about that experience, it was all interesting, but the interesting thing is I had suffered from depression since I was a child, all my life till 23. And I believe I'd suffered from depression because as a child, I knew what real love was, and I wanted to go back to that. And so there was a yearning, deep yearning to return to the light and I didn't see it around me. And now I can tell you I do. I see it all around me, light, and I see love in every aspect of this world, even through the darkest times, the darkest image. So that took a long time, and it was a process. But after this experience, I had no more depressions. And I'm in my 60s now, and I have not had depressions. I have sadness once in a while, but not deep depressions. And I have normal human emotions, because I'm here for a human being experience, of course. So those are the 3 near-death experiences. I've had many other mystical experiences through my life, and we won't go into those now. I think that's probably a lot of material to share with people. But I want to say that the only reason why I share the stories at this point, it's not for my benefit. I'm really not. I'm a private person. I'm basically a hermit. I live quietly in my home, and these talks that I'm beginning to do are because people are asking me to share them. People are asking me to share more and to talk more, and so I'm responding. In fact, people kept asking me, when are you going to write a book? When are you going to tell stories in a book? When are you going to? And I said, the world doesn't need another book. And, the library's full of books, and the world doesn't need another book. But I decided to answer the request, and so I did spend almost 2 years writing, and I wrote my book called Into Love, and I wrote it in a way that I hope that it inspires people's own story. I have in the back of each story, I have little stories through the whole book, and in the end of each story, there's an invitation to pause and reflect on your own life and your own stories. And I really feel this book was a transmission from the higher self, from love. And that's why it's called Into Love. It's the first book I've been told by God or Spirit that there will be 3 books, Into Love, and 2 more coming. So I'll write some more, but it's called Into Love. And I don't know if you can see. It's by Tammy Lee Anderson, and it's called Into Love. It's a lot of reflection there, but I just published it in August. So anyway, so you'll learn a lot more, and there's a lot of beautiful passages that I think people can relate to and helps answer. I've had a lot of good feedback so far, so. But it's made me who I am. It's made me who I am as a compassionate human being, and I wouldn't change one thing in my life that was hard. When you're into pain, when you're into suffering, you want it to change. You want it to end, whether it be physical or emotional. You want, it's just stop, please, But when you look at it from a different point of view, I wouldn't change one thing. I wouldn't change my relationship with my family. It's very good now. I wouldn't change anything. Do we choose our life before? I believe so, on a certain level, not on a human level, but on a soul level. I do believe that we do choose the lives we do for certain experiences, certain understandings, and we choose it not only for our own soul growth, but we choose it for the whole. We choose it. Our journey is not just the journey of one soul, it's the journey of the whole. Everything that we experience feeds back into the whole one I am. And so remember that all your hardship is not just healing and transformation an expansion of love for your own soul, but for the whole. And so I hope that's clear. Well, I think we touched on that through the how does it change my life? It's, in the beginning, the near-death remembering and a re-experiencing at 17 changed my life in a sense that I was seeking for that light, that connection, um, through community, through religious life, and I lived that life. So that changed my life in that way. The third death experiences changed my life in seeking and uniting body, mind, soul, and I've had many near out of body experiences, but I would like to say that it's not about being out of your body. It's about integrating and aligning with your soul's true vibration within form. So we are form and we are formlessness, both. And it's that integration. So it's not about trying to go into formlessness. It's about alignment, integration, and harmony with your soul's purpose in a body. So that's how it's changed my life. I'm having this human experience as a soul, integrating into and learning and growing and stretching love. That's how it's changed my life. I no longer want to be out of this world. I no longer want to be out of the human being experience. My practice is my meditation is no longer sitting on a cushion. My prayer is my life. My life is my prayer. My life is my prayer. My life is my meditation. Every moment throughout the day, whether I'm washing dishes or cleaning the window or, taking a walk, or petting my cat or working or having communication with another. This is my integrating that into love and prayer. Each moment is a prayer. So that integration, that's how it's changed my life. It's an integration as a whole, loving being incarnate. And we'll be out of these bodies soon enough, because when you're out of time, it's like this life was an instant. When you're in the spaces in between in the meditative, when you're taking the third expansive point of view rather than me, you're viewing from a different point of view. You're in timelessness. You're in that space of eternity. And we go back and forth as a human. We go into time as a human being, and we experience playing with past, future, which doesn't really exist. And we go into present moment, which brings us into alignment, and we start to harmonize with that eternal aspect of who we are in form. So we're informing our experience through our consciousness, our unique face of consciousness. Yeah, we can create hell on earth, and we can create heaven on earth. It's the point of view that we're taking at the time. It's where our state of mind, where our state of attention focuses. If I focus on something very negative, if I'm, it's just like food. You eat a bad food and you have a bad experience in your stomach. You sit and watch and you put information into your consciousness, into your mind through the internet. I think these screens can be quite risky because we're in front of them too much. I'd say get away from your screens. They have their place, and because stories like this can be shared, but what you feed your mind will affect your state of peace, your state of being. So yes, we can absolutely create heaven and hell on earth. And the afterlife, I don't believe so. I have no experience of such a thing because there is only love, there is only forgiveness, and there is only God, and God is only love. And so complete awareness of who you are, which is an aspect of God, remembers who you are. So when you pass, you remember who you are, which is an aspect of the one, I am, love. So no, I would say no. There is no hell after this. Here it is again, Into Love by Tammy Lee Anderson. And it's got quite a, it's hard to get the glare off there. Into Love. And Suzanne Giesman, I don't know if you've heard of Suzanne Giesman, but she did the foreword to the book. And it's available all over the world. You can get it on Amazon, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, you can get it everywhere. And if you want to find more about me, you want to make an appointment, I do mentoring, I do healing sessions, and I also do mediumship sessions. And I love interacting with people one-on-one. That's my favorite thing to do. And so, but if you're interested in that, you can go to healingwellness.com. That's my website, healingwellness.com. And let's connect. It's all about love. People often say to me, I want to be happy in this life. Happiness is something we're chasing, I would say be peaceful in your life. Find that sense of peace, that inner peace. And how you go there, how you do that, people say, how do you find peace? And it's like, you are peace. You breathe in and you breathe out. You resist grasping after something and pushing away, grasping, pushing. What are you holding on to in this life? Find through your breath, through sitting under a tree, sitting, taking a walk, find in your breath that center alignment with your soul and breathe into peace. And that's what I would wish for people. The peace in this world is not going to come from the outside. It's going to come from the inside out. Love comes from the inside out. Peace comes from the inside out. The world has much going on. It has a lot of difficulty and challenges. And people are looking for a savior. They're looking for a president. They're looking for somebody to save them. And I would say you are your savior by being peace, being love from the inside out. Do the work. Do that. And all you have to do, seriously, is breathe in and breathe out and breathe into that space of who you really are and see the divine aspect of the light as you are and shine that light in the world. Smile to somebody that needs a smile today. Give a kind word to somebody that needs a kind word today. And that will build within you. You will become more in alignment with love and peace by giving it to others, by giving it from the inside out and letting it overflow. Many people are seeking for peace and love from the outside. They're trying to grab something, grab a teacher's wisdom, grab a guru's, teacher, tell me, please tell me. It's like, no, it's you. It's kingdom of God is within you. Go within the kingdom of God and let that pour out through you. And so that's brilliant now. I want to say thank you for everyone who's listening to this.